So last week on the program, we talked about setting goals in the new year. This week, we're going to be joined by fellow certified financial fiduciary Zach Keister of Nelson Financial Planning to learn how you might be able to successfully achieve said goals that were set. And along with that, we're going to talk about what you need to do if you received a letter from sort of a third-party investment provider. Maybe that's a company like ComputerShare or a investment management company or whatever the case may be. A number of folks have reached out to us and said, we got these letters in the mail telling us that we need to do something within a certain period of time. We're going to talk about those letters and explain what they are and, most importantly, encourage you to follow the instructions in them because you need to do that. So welcome on into Dollars and Sense, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. One of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, also a top 25 financial planning podcast. So make sure you check us out on all of those venues, courtesy of our website at nelsonfinancialplanning.com. My name is Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner and certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning, where I am pleased to have one of our fellow certified financial fiduciaries of Nelson Financial Planning, Zach Keister, joining me on the program this morning.
Happy to be here. Fourth go-around on the radio show.
There you go. Very good. Very good. Zach, now you have been with us for
about 3.5 years.
3.5 years, continuing on sort of the progression that we have at the firm, where we start you out doing some of the more simpler things, and then after a period of time, usually about 3 years, you are able to earn that certified financial fiduciary designation, which obviously is pretty crucial out there in the world of advising people.
Absolutely it is. It's very important to seek guidance from those kinds of folks.
That is true. And that way you know that the guidance you're going to get is in your best interest rather than their best interest.
That's right. It's very important.
The whole concept of being a fiduciary, it certainly has been, I guess, a little bit of an odd start to the year with these holidays falling on Wednesdays,
and just always feels like I'm raiding another holiday container. And it seems like every year we end up eating a bunch of cheese this time of year. Do you eat a bunch of cheese? Every dish has cheese.
That is very true. So hopefully you're not lactose intolerant during the holidays or diabetic, because there's been a lot of cookie consumption as well.
That's right. So we got cheese and sugar,
right.
The two main food groups of winter.
Correct. Or if you're watching Elf. The other thing that has been odd, really, over the past 3 weeks is that there has been a day where the markets haven't been open. First it was Christmas, and then it was New Year's Day, and then this past week, of course, it was the day of mourning for former President Jimmy Carter. So it's been hard to get sort of get on track, it seems, or build a pattern given the breakup of the week over the past 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's been really odd. Just seems like a bunch of Mondays and Fridays and not knowing what day it is at all.
Right. That is very true. A bunch of Mondays and Fridays all compressed together. That's a fair analogy. But it also means that the year is getting off to a quick start. Certainly, we're almost midway through January. The original air date of this program is January 12th. So almost halfway through January. Busy start for us at the office. Our clients at this point would have received our beginning of the year letter, which we got out in the mail this past week. So if you are a client of Nelson Financial Planning, make sure you're checking your mail. That letter, as is always the case, we do that biannually. It's got an announcement of our events for the first half of the year.
Yeah, very excited for this year's events as well.
Yeah, no, we run a good lineup, mostly on the educational side of things, although we did put a shred day in there as well coming up in May. So you'll hear much more about that as things progress. And I guess it is, as fast as the year goes, it underscores, and this is what we're going to talk about this morning, is it underscores the need to make the time to really get on the right track financially. And this really does relate to some of the things we're going to talk about this morning, is how you ultimately get on the right path to achieve your financial goals.
Right, and one of those major items is creating a budget. So very important to create a budget, especially a lot of folks like to do it right here at the beginning of the year, start off fresh, start off well. And so we're going to talk about some items about why you should budget, what happens when you don't budget, what happens when you do budget, and everything in between.
But today is actually an interesting day from the perspective of those resolutions that you make. So tell us the significance of today's act, because I did not know this. I had not heard this concept before.
Today is dubbed National Quitters Day, January 12th, National Quitters Day. This was a study done by Fortune, found that most people tend to put their resolutions and goals by the side, by the 12th. 12 days into the year, everybody seems to go by the wayside on all of their goals.
So an important topic today on the program to hopefully allow you to get past Quitters Day to the point where you're able to accomplish the goals that you're trying to do.
Yeah, we're here to try and provide you some ways to not be a participant in Quitters Day this year.
So talk to us a little bit about budget. You've got some interesting stats on, the percentage of people who actually do wind up creating a budget, but unfortunately, not that many follow through.
So a survey done by NerdWallet found that 74% of Americans do a budget, but let's back that up a little bit, because also in this study they found that 84% of the folks that do a budget blow by it every month.
Yeah. No, that is unfortunately pretty crucial in terms of being able to manage your finances. We've certainly talked at length over the years on the program about the need to do a budget. What are some of the things that people can ultimately obtain or achieve once they kind of set that budget, or what are some of the things that they need to do first when we're thinking about establishing the budget?
So when we're thinking about starting a budget, really a big help is to just kind of sit down and say, okay, what are my fixed expenses and what are my variables, right? Your fixed expenses are things that don't change month to month. That's your rent, your mortgage, your car payment, the electric bill, the things that are going to be sure and true every single month. So that's the fixed. The variable is going to be, well, it's the holiday season. I need to buy presents, or it's Easter, or what have you, Valentine's Day. So a little bit of variation in there, and that's the thing that you really need to be planning for. The statutory items are always going to be there, but the variables throughout the months will obviously change. So that's the big planning side of things.
To really think about and how to separate those, all of your expenses into those two different categories is certainly kind of the first step. This is where you hear, when you start to set a budget, you start to establish goals. That's where you kind of hear the SMART acronym, right? Mm-hmm. And you want, when you do this, you want to set SMART budgeting goals, and I guess the SMART acronym part stands for a bunch of different things that make sense.
A couple of different things: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based.
So those are, each one of those highlights an important piece of what you need to do when you're thinking about not just setting budgeting goals, but any goals in general.
Absolutely. And the key point of making a budget, like most things, is being consistent. Yeah. What's a budget without consistency? So you got to stay on top of things. Try and keep it on the guardrails. I'm going to use a little bit of a quote from Dave Ramsey on this one when it comes to budgeting, particularly in holiday season, is he always says, good thing Christmas is the same day every year, so you never have to figure out which day in December it's going to be.
It does have some predictability, doesn't it? So when we're going to slide to a break. When we get back from the break, we're going to kind of set the table of, some of the things that, or some of the costs, if you will, if you don't budget, and then we'll follow that up with some of the ways in which you can budget effectively and what you'll get out of that. So that's the good news, if you will, to the conversation. We're going to take a break, though, here on Dollars and Sense with Joel Garris and Zach Keister of Nelson Financial Planning. We're talking a little bit on the program this morning, Zach, about budgeting, and so let's just paint the issue very clear of some of the negative consequences that can happen if you don't budget.
Yeah, there's a lot of negative consequences. One of them, chief, being emotional stress, right? You're trying to pay your bills. You're trying to pay the variable expenses, the various things. And so that has a lot of stress to it. There is a lot of psychology tied to money, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I often think I should have gone to school and become a psychiatrist rather than having a math and science background for what we do on a regular basis.
And that truly is a major part of our conversations that we have.
Right.
Is the emotional side of things, whether positive or negative. There's
Correct.
both sides.
Correct. Yeah. Nope. That's very true.
So another issue is the inconsistent income for folks that are gig workers or maybe do some kind of Uber Eats or delivery, that sort of stuff. It's hard to budget when you don't have the same amount coming in every month.
Yeah, and that's true for a lot of small business owners as well. Just that uncertainty of that stream of income, which really makes that budgeting piece all the more crucial and maybe a little bit harder when you think about that.
A little bit harder to hit the target when the target's always moving.
Right. Right.
Another issue would be financial literacy. So that's a big problem today. 65%, this is from the National Endowment for Financial Education, 65% of Americans feel that their financial education is not enough.
Yeah. No, that is very true. And unfortunately, by corollary, a sad statement of what you learn in schools these days. And of course, Zach, as you know, one of the biggest reasons why we sat down and wrote our book, NextGen Dollars and Sense, is to really help be able to give that to folks as a guide or as a template for at least getting a basic understanding of a host of different financial issues, because financial literacy is way down, and in today's world it needs to go way up.
And in NextGen Dollars and Sense, there's actually quite a few chapters tied to our subject today. Yeah. Budgeting chapter 21, if you want to pull up the book and take a look. And we've got tons of great resources in there. Actually, in the appendix of the book is some budgeting items to help you start your first budget.
Yep. Nope. That's exactly right. And of course, you know, a budget will help you also avoid this notion of trying to keep up with the Joneses, right?
Right. And which is even more prevalent today than it ever has been. When you look at social media, the things that people post on there, the supposed lives that so many people live. You know, there's actually several companies out there that have old jetliners, right? Old Airstream jetliners, of which you can go in, pay, I don't know, $200 and take a photo for Instagram. So it looks like you're on a jetliner. Like you're on your own personal plane. But you rented it for 20 minutes while you took a picture.
I have no doubt. Yes, that is very true. In today's social media world, it's that pressure is even more than what it was in the past. That's for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so it just underscores how important it is just to sit down, take a little bit of time, once a month, once every couple weeks, really look at your fixed expenses and your variable expenses and say, okay, what am I going to do this month? Because think about the relief. It's the certainty of the unknown, really, Joel. Think about the relief you could have. Most people think budgeting as a restriction. Oh, I have a budget, so I can't do this, or I don't get to do this. But really, you're just empowering yourself to pay your bills that you need to pay, plus get a little bit of relief. Because when it's on paper like that, you think, okay, I can make this. I can survive the month, if you will.
Well, there's certainly some major consequences if you don't budget, right? I mean, there's major issues that come about as a result. Chiefly the notion of overspending.
Right, overspending and the way in which you spend your money. You know, most of the debt nowadays is coming from the credit cards and the instant payments and that sort of stuff that doesn't have the bite.
Yeah.
That paying with cash or watching your debit card balance go down, the bite is not there. Back to the psychology. The psychology is not there. The brain doesn't trigger as hard as it would if you were handing over those crisp dollar bills and they're leaving the grasp of your hand.
No, Dave Ramsey, to quote Dave Ramsey again, often quotes the study that said that the use of cash makes you much more inclined to really think through your spending patterns.
Yeah, and absolutely. So another interesting statistic that I found, the Federal Reserve reported that the average American household carries over $6,000 specifically in credit card debt. So there's probably some overspending in the average American household, probably on a credit card. Not much psychology, emotional pull on that, so much easier to do.
Well, and then that if you're overspending, then and racking up debt, then you're never going to achieve one of the first financial goals that you should have, which is establishing that emergency savings plan.
Right, and that's very important to have when you're overspending. Like you mentioned, you're always making these payments. You have no emergency savings. The 2023 Consumer Financial Protection Bureau did a survey, this is a scary statistic, Joel, that over 40% of Americans would struggle to cover just a $400 bill without going into debt or selling a personal possession.
So a $400 bill is not much. I mean, any car bill
Any
is
car
going to be
bill.
more than $400 in today's world.
You blow one tire and
Correct.
You're out of luck. But that's just kind of the short-term things. Like, when you look at the long-term, you jeopardize all of your financial goals completely. So some other things is the emotional toll. Again, back to psychology. The emotional toll, the stress, the anxiety, the relationship issues, that has a large thing as well. Big play is the relationship issues that you could have from not planning and not budgeting. And when you just budget, it just brings you so much more peace.
So the good news is that certainly not all hope is lost. Starting a budget today is easier and more accessible than it really ever has been, thanks to technology.
Yeah, there's tons of apps out there. They try to make it easy as you can. We have worksheets available to folks to be able to use. There's several out there like Mint, or You Need a Budget, or even, again, Dave Ramsey's Every Dollar, that really track your spending. And if you sit down and track your spending along the way, it's going to be much better for you in the long run. So when you do have those surprises, you will hopefully have your emergency fund to use and not have to go back into the debt and repeat the cycle over and over again.
No, our book, NextGen Dollars and Sense, has a nice template that links to a downloadable and savable Excel spreadsheet. As a matter of fact, when Nelson, my oldest, moved away and started his full-time job about a year ago, we actually kind of sat down and worked through that to get a handle on kind of how much he can spend for rent, how much he can spend for other things, and how much he needs to save and put into his retirement account. So that's really the budget is intended to be a tool, and in today's world, a lot of different options out there in terms of those tools that are available.
There's a ton of different options, Joel. But the other thing with doing your budget is you keep yourself accountable. Yeah. You're watching how everything is flowing, and you're saying, okay, I'm noticing an overtrend in this. I need to scale back. So like on your dining out, oh, I spent this much on dining out this month, let's scale it back. If you're not budgeting, you have absolutely no idea how much is flowing out.
Yeah, it's one thing to make the budget, to follow the budget, but you also have to reflect on the budget. I think that's really the key takeaway, if you will. With that, we're going to take a break and continue the conversation here on Dollars and Sense with Joel Garris and Zach Keister of Nelson Financial Planning. My name is Joel Garris. Joining me this week, Zach Keister. Welcome back to the program. This is number 4 for you, right?
Yeah, right. Happy to be here. Get the 4th one on the roll.
There you go. Zach is sort of working up the food chain, if you will, at Nelson Financial Planning. Recently, last year, became another one of our certified financial fiduciaries. So now engaged more directly in the process of helping our clients plan for the future.
Yeah, and happy to do so. Enjoying every minute of it.
Well, and certainly what we were talking about in the first half of the program about budgeting, boy, that's pretty crucial. That's a pretty fundamental thing that folks need to be doing, particularly if they're looking to try and keep their goals on track for the year.
Yeah, I would say that's chief among them. Step number 1 of your financial life is looking at the budget.
So here's the other thing that we've had a lot of conversations about, and a number of our clients have reached out to us on this, where they've gotten these sort of odd letters from sort of third-party investment providers, and some of our clients were even nice enough to kind of send us copies of these letters, so we were able to look at it. And these letters are sort of coming from providers of assets or institutional holding companies of those assets that folks own that aren't necessarily part of sort of the holdings that they have with us. That could be an individual stock that they bought years ago, or a dividend reinvestment program, or just an investment that's got a large gain. And so, of course, we never require clients to put all their assets with us, and in some cases it doesn't make sense if there's a cost to that, or if there's a tax reason, or if there's an investment reason to do that. But these letters, you really want to sort of pay attention to them.
Right, yeah, and they are coming from, like you mentioned, maybe some folks from a prior job, or say like a lot of folks that we have that work at Publix or that kind of place could own a share of Publix at a outside institution, and so they're getting these letters, and they certainly are legitimate letters. We definitely want to paint that picture. These are legitimate letters, even though your email box and your mailbox, for that matter, are getting flooded with scams nowadays.
Correct.
Nowadays, these are true letters.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, part of why we wanted to talk about it on the program. Is it's hard to, in today's world, distinguish what is a scam, or what is not really necessary, or things you should sort of ignore, and versus this, which is certainly something that you should. And it really does seem that there is a concerted effort. I spoke to one client who had gotten these letters from no less than 3 different institutions over the course of just the past couple of months. So there really does seem to be this push to get these letters out.
Yeah, and they're definitely trying to reach out to you. They want to get in contact with you just to make some contact over time about your account. And we're going to talk about what happens if you don't contact them back.
Right. Well, the concept behind these letters is that they are directing you to reach out to that particular institution, and the letters require you to do that within a specified period of time, or else you run the risk of losing that asset. That ultimately means that they send that asset over to the state of Florida in the form of abandoned property. So pretty important stuff to pay attention to.
Very important to pay attention to. These are legitimate letters. Please respond to them. But here in Florida, you have 3 years. Right. Some states, it's up to 5, but here in Florida, you have 3 years. And we did find out some interesting things, that some folks have money coming out of these accounts, say on a monthly basis, automatically. It's a great little program, but we found out that doesn't even count. Right. That doesn't count towards your contact with them.
Yeah, a systematic transaction, like if you've got a systematic withdrawal like Zach was talking about taking money out of an account on a regular basis, you would think, well, I'm having contact with them because they're putting money into my account every month. But the concept here and the statute here in Florida is a little bit more restrictive, in that you have to have evidence of proactive contact by an individual, and that has to happen within a 3-year period of time. Otherwise, the investment provider just sends the money off to the state.
Just jets it right off. So we'll share this probably a couple times, but I do want to share the address, the web address, in case you find yourself in this situation and you do need to go track down your own rightful property. The web address is www.fltreasurehunt.gov. So might be good to just go ahead and log in there anyway, put in your information, and see if maybe you do have something in there.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. You always want to just sort of at least check that out, because what happens is, and again, this is pretty crucial, because you may think that, well, I've engaged, or I've got ongoing correspondence, but that is not enough to satisfy the abandoned property statute here in Florida. It's got to be proactive contact. So what these letters that people are getting are asking you to do one of three things. Either you call the institution, or you sign the letter and mail it back in, or you go online and you go through the process of signing in, logging in, and making that connection. And they give you a specific date to do that, and it's not an infinite amount of time, that's for sure.
No, it's actually a pretty short period of time that you have to respond, like you mentioned, Joel, either online or through the letter that they send you, or they'll give you the phone number and give them a call. So I would certainly encourage you to take the time, like we mentioned in budgeting, to take the time to contact these folks and say, hey, I'm here, this is my account, and this is still active. And like I mentioned earlier, I would get on the website just to see, even if you think you might not have something, you very well could have something floating around out there. Right. All this stuff, especially over the years, all these papers get mixed up. You think you've sold this, but you still own this, so wouldn't hurt to hop on the website and check it out.
Correct, and along with that, making sure that you're following and paying attention to these letters, because as you're pointing out, Zach, there is a process to reclaim these assets that may have been considered abandoned and sent over to the state, but that's a little bit of a process, if you will.
It is a little bit of process, and is that something you really want to do to get back your own property? It's not like you just log in and say, hey, this is mine, give it back. It's a little bit, you gotta
prove yourself.
You gotta prove
who you are. Correct.
Prove who you are, give some documentation, say I am who I am, I'm still alive, all that stuff. And is that something you really want to have to go to when you could just take a minute, mail the letter back, or give them a 5-minute phone call? That just seems like the path of least resistance.
that would be correct. And there really does seem to be a concerted effort to follow the rules of these abandoned property laws, particularly here in Florida. I just was very surprised at the number of conversations we've had with clients over the past 2 or 3 months, and the number of institutions that are sending out these letters. So they are legitimate.
They are legitimate.
Make sure you respond to it. Otherwise, you're going to be playing around online with a state of Florida government website.
Yeah, you're going to be trying to dig around on the like I mentioned earlier, the FloridaTreasureHunt.gov website, trying to reclaim your own property.
So pay attention to that mail, folks, as with anything. And to Zach's point, take the time to make sure that you are properly doing what you need to do. And I guess the key concept here, Zach, is it's got to be customer initiated. You can't just be getting statements or things like that and think, hey, this has to qualify. It's contact that is initiated by you.
Yeah, you have to go through and make the contact on your end. And so really, like we mentioned, this could take 5 or 10 minutes of your time to contact these folks. 5-10 minutes to save you a whole lot of headache trying to mess around on the website.
Otherwise, it winds up being abandoned property, and then that means you don't have any control over your own money. That's not a good thing. With that, we're going to take a break and continue here on Dollars and Sense with Joel Garris and Zach Keister of Nelson Financial Planning. So there continues to be some significant developments in the courts around the country involving wills that really underscore the need to make sure that when you do a will, that you do it in the correct format and you put it in writing. This is an issue, Zach, where we just see different states kind of doing different things, and there's no real sort of homogeneous approach on how you tackle this notion of what constitutes a valid will.
Yeah, that's right, Joel. And so that underscores how important it is to do it the right way, because in the eyes of the courts, there's only one way to do it.
Right.
So it's better to play the game and do it the right way to begin with, rather than having to question, is my will legitimate? Is the route that I'm taking legitimate? If you just go by the way that they see right, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, by the time your will is being discussed in the court of law, you're dead. So there's no real way to undo it or redo it or change things.
No take backsies on that one. If
no
you will.
take backsies on that one. And what we're talking about is, every state has its own rules, and when it comes to estate planning, when it comes to writing a will, those are governed by the laws of the state in which you are a resident. Okay, so if you live in Montana, then you got to follow Montana rules. If you live in Florida, you got to follow Florida rules. And there's just been a bunch of cases where some of the different types of options, whether it's video recording, audio recordings, just have sort of been completely ignored by the court system, and that's weird, because in today's world, where you would say, a voice recording or an audio recording or video recording, certainly that must be sufficient, and that isn't. And there's a pretty recent case of late that is kind of making the rounds. That underscores this one.
Yeah, one case that we're going to talk about real quick here is out of Montana. Let's see, a Jesse Beck out of Montana recorded a selfie video 4 days prior to his passing in a tragic motorcycle accident, acknowledging what his living estate was going to be, what his estate was going to be, what his will was going to be for his assets. And what had happened is the court acknowledged it,
right?
But they said, this isn't a true and legitimate copy of a will.
Clearly shows intent, because in the video, Jesse talks about, I'm leaving everything to my brother. And the court said, yep, we understand that that's what you wanted, but because you did not sort of dot the I's, cross the T's, literally, then it is invalid. And you certainly don't want to get yourself in that situation, because what courts and what they count, depending upon the state, as a legitimate will versus an illegitimate will varies from state to state.
It does. It definitely does. And what the courts see as correct and marginally correct varies by state by state. So you got to look into what your state requires specifically.
Well, and in a lot of states, but not all, will recognize a will written out and signed by hand, whether that's without witnesses or with witnesses, and sometimes that's referred to as a holographic will when you don't have witnesses, but it is written out, whether that's a note on a napkin or whatever the case may be. And I think that gets us to what you really want to be doing as it relates to a will, because in today's digital world with video and audio recordings, that is not necessarily an area that the courts, particularly as it relates to wills and probate, are really embracing.
Yeah, and there's 12 states that recognize electronic wills. Again, check in your state to see what they require. Some of them allow a digital note or even a text, but it's very broad. The rules are broad. It's very based in the state in which you live, whether they accept something or not, and that's obviously something you're going to want to check out and follow the guidelines on when you're setting up doing your estate planning.
And 12 states, as you said, 12 states that recognize an electronic will, that there's still 38 other states. So most of them don't recognize that option. And it really is, when you stop and think about it, I think you would be surprised, right? Because these days, in today's world, we know that you can go online and change the beneficiary on an account at any point in time. That's not that hard to do. You just go online and do it online.
Right, and you can utilize, sometimes your specific investment company will have a website, and you could just log right in and change it right there, input your beneficiary's information. Couldn't be easier. Another option a lot of folks utilize is DocuSign nowadays. Sure. So there's a myriad of very quick and efficient options to do this in the way the courts still like it to be, the good old-fashioned way.
Last property transaction I was involved in, it was all DocuSign. I didn't go to a closing company. I mean, it just kind of clicked, and that was it. And so you would think, but the reality is that the legal system, particularly as it relates to wills and probates, really hasn't sort of caught up with all of the different options that are available in today's world.
Yeah, and that's true. And it's just so easy to do it their way with an online option. Why not? Why test the waters? Why say, well, I'm going to do this as a video. This might work, this might not work. Right. Why leave any uncertainty when the options to do it correctly are right there and very easy to do?
And the gold standard is that any state would recognize is you sit down, you put it in writing, you have it witnessed. Take the time. Oh, but this is I guess part of the common theme.
So take the time
to do it right.
Absolutely. And the bottom line is there is no shortages of lawyers. There's no shortages of online resources to be able to reach out. Even a combination. You could reach out to a lawyer online. You don't even have to go physically into a lawyer office anymore, into a law office anymore. You could reach out to a lawyer online, do all your documentation online through DocuSign or a program like that. So very important to just take the time, do it correctly, do it the way that they want it, and then you can not have to worry about any undoubt.
Yeah, and because at this point, or at the point where your will is getting read, you don't get a chance to redo it.
Yeah, you're kind of set in stone, if you will, at that point, not to...
No, but I guess the key point, and I guess this probably is sort of the commonality or the common theme this week on the program is take the time. Take the time to make sure that you are doing it correct. Take the time to make sure that you are getting your will written so that it's a written document, so that it is witnessed. Sure, you could do it electronically. Maybe even in some states you could do it by video or audio, but the bottom line is understand that the gold standard is, and that is a written document, signed, witnessed, all of those good things. And the same thing is true about what we were talking about in the last segment, Zach, about taking the time to not ignore these letters that you might be getting from investment providers.
Right, and the segment before that about budgeting. So as you can see, financial matters take some time. So it is very important to take the time to do it. Think about how much time you have spent in building up your assets throughout your life. Why would you take a couple of minutes and write down where all your assets are going to go on a napkin? Think about all the time you spent to accumulate that. Wouldn't you want to give yourself the same amount of time and the dignity of saying, this is what I want to have happen with this amount of money that I've spent years making? Why spend all those years making it and then writing it down on a napkin, and then it doesn't go to where you want
Correct.
it to go?
And hoping that it's gonna work. So maybe that's the New Year's resolution, even though today is technically Quitter's Day, right? Where you fail or you give up at this point in the year on your resolutions. Maybe though it's not too late to stick in another one, which is I'm going to make the time to make sure that I do things properly when it relates to my finances.
It sounds like a good goal to me.
There you go. Well, Zach, thank you for joining us on the program. We've enjoyed having you. We will look forward to having you join us again. We're going to wrap it on up and get on out of here. If you've got any questions about anything that we talked about on the program, please contact us courtesy of our website at Nelson Financial Planning. While there, you can also set up an absolutely free conversation to discuss with us your entire financial picture as well. With that, we're going to wrap it on up and get on out of here. This has been Joel Garris, Zach Keister of Nelson Financial Planning on Dollars and Sense.